It is a beautiful Saturday afternoon. I am 9 years old, and my grandmother is walking me to my piano lesson. But despite the piercing blue sky, the beautiful clouds were both very quiet because of what's happened at home again. My parents have had another one of their awful arguments. My mother should be walking me, but she's at home in her room, too upset. And by the time my grandmother deposits me in the lobby of the apartment building, I'm so upset I can't look at her. She holds my face, she looks me squarely in the eyes, and she says, "Don't say anything." I know not to say anything. In the kind of house that I grew up in, the tacit understanding was that you never said anything. I'm sitting now on the piano bench. My teacher, Ruth, is in the room, and I'm supposed to be playing the piano, but I'm staring at my lap because I'm too upset. I feel Ruth's hand on my shoulder, and I hear her say, "Tell me." It was the first time in my life I had ever felt vulnerable enough to tell my story, and I did. I told her everything. By the time I was done, I was relieved and unburdened, but I was also very sad because saying those words out loud made it real that I was living a very, very troubled childhood. But that was the summer I started writing stories. So I ask you, when is the last time your kid told you a story, your grandchild, a student, a young person in your family? I am a writer, a storyteller, and an educator of 23 years in New York City classrooms, and I've had the privilege of teaching kids how to write stories and how to tell them. When I first started, it was a piece of chalk and a blackboard, and now I teach with a smartboard, and that's not the only thing that has changed. Kids don't talk the way they used to. They don't raise their hand. They're silenced. So I work at the Queen's School of Inquiry in New York City. It's a progressive early college school. And about 10 years ago, my principal comes to me and she says, "Aida, we have this cohort of really, really amazing, highly academic young women, but they don't talk in the classroom. They're silent. They just sit in the back and they don't raise their hand. Do you have a curriculum for them?" And I thought about my public speaking curriculum, and I thought about my mini unit in storytelling, and I was happy to take on this new elective. So these girls file in, I give an easy prompt, and they're writing paragraphs. But by the time they're done and I ask them to raise their hand, just read a sentence, they won't do it. I ask them to come up in front of the room and talk about their name for 30 seconds. They're staring at their feet. So I kind of knew what I was up against, and I started my storytelling unit with them. I taught them two kinds of stories, low risk and high risk. The low risk stories are the moments in our lives that have levity and irony, maybe something funny we can look back on. The high risk stories, that's the tough stuff. That's what you don't want to think about anymore because it was too hard. Maybe a mistake, maybe something embarrassing, maybe something too terrible to just talk about. And at the end of the semester, I filled the largest room in the building. We had the administrators, we had the peers of these young women who are all graduating. It was about 80 to 100 people. And they went up there and they told their stories. Maybe you're wondering what kind of stories they told. I myself was surprised when the majority of them told their most vulnerable, high-risk stories. And I think about Katie. Katie was a senior that year, and her mother had suddenly died in the 8th grade. And the whole school knew about it, but it was the thing you never brought up to her. And she'd had a tough high school, a bunch of years. And she decided to go up there and tell the story of her mother's passing. At rehearsal, I even said, Katie, you don't need to do this when we do the presentation. And she said, okay, Ms. Zilelian, thank you. I appreciate that, because I knew it was so hard for her. And then that day, at the last minute, as I'm about to close, she comes up to me and she tugs at my sleeve. She goes, I have to do this. And she went up in front of all those people and told the passing of her mother and how it had impacted her. And what she said at the end, she said, I know that I am the bravest person I will ever meet because I was able to come up here and tell this story to all of you. By the way, she's returned to QSI and she's going to be a teacher. I ran into her 3 weeks ago. So the following year, my principal comes to me and she says, I have a whole other group for you. They're seniors, 15 very rowdy young men who are in desperate need of an elective credit. They're not academic at all, but they need to graduate. Can you do this? I wanted to take the challenge. So in they come. Boy, were they rowdy. There's no pen. There's no pencil. There's no sheet of paper. They just sit down. They don't do any of the writing, but their hands are going up. I taught them high-risk stories and low-risk stories. I fill the largest room in the building. And these young men went up and told their most vulnerable, high-risk stories. The class clown talked about the day that his father left and never came back. And what he said at the end was, what I realized in all of this is just because you love someone doesn't mean they'll love you back. So here's a question. Why did all these kids want to be so visible and vulnerable in that? Why were they okay sharing the most painful moments from their lives in front of their peers, teachers, administration? Well, I didn't realize it at the time, but I've been telling my own stories as well to teach them. Stories appropriate for the classroom, but stories nonetheless. My first heartbreak, the time I ran away from home, my senior year of high school when I'd gotten jumped. And every time I told a story and they were looking at me, their eyes were saying, tell me. So I did. The years have passed, and I have a lot of students come to me. Ms. Zilelian, the class has been so wonderful for me. The other day, it was my parents' wedding anniversary, and I made a toast. It was my sister's 16th birthday party, and I went up there and said a few words about her. Ms. Zilelian, my class participation grade is so much higher now. And I'm listening to all of this, but I'm not really taking it in. Until I heard from Sanjit. Sanjit was my student 20 years ago at the first school where I taught. He was an English language learner. I remember him getting up there nervous, having such a hard time putting the words together, but I had created that safe space for him to talk about himself. And so he sends me this email. A year ago, Ms. Zilelian, I don't know if you remember me. My name is Sanjit. Thank you so much for giving me that space to be myself, despite the fact that I didn't speak English well. I'm an engineer now. I go to conferences. I have to talk about myself. And I can honestly say that your class is what made the most lasting impact on me and why I can do what I do with such ease and success. So, how do you get your kid or a kid to tell a story? Number one, make yourself vulnerable. Take that risk. Number 2, tell a story that still lives inside of you. Number 3, tell a story that they can still see through your eyes at that age. They don't need a big audience. They need one person, the way I was for Sanjit, the way Ruth was for me. Thank you.